Welcome to the CoFounders podcast. Real-life stories from startups to billion-dollar iconic brands. Conversations with industry disruptors and inspiring leaders. Brought to you in part by WeWork, the world's largest network of co-working spaces. More info at WeWork.com. And the Pro Business Channel, uploading the future. More info at ProBusinessChannel.com. Now let's join our host and guests on this episode of the CoFounders podcast.
All right, Rich Casanova here, live in the Pro Business Channel studios in Atlanta. And if you're familiar with Atlanta, we're in Buckhead with we call our $1 billion Buckhead view. And as we mentioned, this show is being brought to you in part by WeWork. Big fans of WeWork. They've just announced their 100th location. So they're taking over the world, one co-working space at a time. And we're excited to welcome them here to Atlanta. And speaking of WeWork, we have actually one of our guests is joining us live remote from California. Rona Lewis is a WeWork fan out that way, and we're going to be having a conversation with her about her business, Play More Corporate Wellbeing. And live in our Atlanta studio, we have Justin Blaylock is joining us here, going to be talking about B2B services. And what piqued my interest was about the sales process or some of the sales funnels and helping businesses manage their business and their sales pipeline and so forth. But let's first, and if you've been listening to the Co-Founders podcast for a while, Craig Williams is in New York, so a shout out to Craig Williams. I'm sure he's tuning in either now or in one of our rebroadcasts. So let's go ahead and jump into our guest lineup here and welcome Rona to the show. So Rona, what part of California again?
I'm in Los Angeles.
Okay. L.A. and how long?
California, yeah.
Yeah, and how long out that way?
I have been here for 12 years. I'm originally from New York.
Oh, okay. And we were mentioning before we went on the air that you're kind of surfing around the WeWork communities, and you're a floater, if you will, right? But you've checked out a number of those locations in L.A. How many out in that way?
I think there's 9
wow.
or 10.
Wow.
And they're building more all the time because they're just so popular.
I mean, they've definitely. I've had one of our investors came in WeWork, and they called it the new office, and I thought that was well said. It really describes the vibe and the feel, and it's not business typical as has been done in the past. But 9 or 10. Wow, we just have our very first here in the whole Southeast and in Atlanta. But they're planning on opening.
It's such a great area for entrepreneurs, for tech startups, for the motion picture industry, and of course for my business, corporate wellness and corporate well-being, because it's such an outdoorsy, healthy kind of area, and all these businesses understand the need for keeping healthy in all aspects of life. So it's just a great community.
Yeah, a huge project in Atlanta is they call the Beltline, which is followed an old rail system, and it's just huge. People are out walking, hiking, rollerblading, all hours of the day and night, and then all of the businesses have kind of migrated to that, and it is that sense of people want to be active, and we're certainly in the right weather as you all are in L.A. So talk to us about, before we jump into your business, a little bit of your background before you dipped your toe in the corporate well-being space. What did Rona Lewis do in a former life? Rona.
I apologize. It's me driving.
All right, yeah. We'll pull off and have a cup of coffee and join us on the show here, yeah.
Yeah, sorry about that. That's what I'm about to do.
Okay, perfect. So you may or may not caught what I've had mentioned is the Beltline here in Atlanta is huge. It's a huge success, allowing people to kind of be out and about and that work-play environment. So what I was just asking was, before you dipped your toe in the corporate well-being space or sandbox, what kept you busy?
Well, I actually started my career in the corporate world. I was an advertising executive. I sold media and radio and television time in New York, and I kind of got a little burned out. I was great at it, but it wasn't my passion. And when I went into the the fitness area and nutrition and things like that, I realized that filled a great part of who I was. However, it didn't complete the sense of well-being. So I became an expert in creativity and play, and hence Play More was born.
All right. And then, so now currently, what's a typical day look like for you?
Well, a typical day is either setting up programs for companies. I'll go in and get chats about the importance of being playful and setting yourself up for that creative mindset. Sometimes I'll lead our imagination breaks. These are 15 to 20 minute breaks with either a department or a few people, depending on how large the company is, and just playing for the sake of play. Because studies have shown when you do something that is for the sake of doing it, and you're in that creative mode, you get epiphanies that can help your business. And when stress takes over, I call it the adult mind, basically, that's when you really get burnout. So my company just helps people stay in that creative, fun mindset and enables them to be more productive.
I love that idea of an imagination break. I don't know if I'm going to say I coined this phrase because I've never heard it other than me stating it. But often people say when they have trouble thinking of a thought or they can't, their mind escapes them, they use another term. I call it a brain vacation, right? So if you can't think of something.
Yes. Exactly.
And we've all experienced it on a personal level when you're just you're struggling on and off during the day trying to think of something, or you're hit a roadblock, and later you jump in the shower or you take a nap or you get diverted, by something else, and all of a sudden it just comes to you. It appears to come to you out of the blue, right? But that's not the case, right?
Yes, the subconscious mind is allowed to free associate when you do something that's monotonous.
Right.
And that's how you come up with all these creative epiphanies.
And I noticed in your show notes an interesting topic we could spend the next hour on, but this idea of the fallacy, if you will, of the work-life balance, because that used to be the popular thing, multitasking, and you got to strike this balance. But it seems like more and more I hear folks talking that that's a huge misnomer. Yes or yes?
Exactly. Oh, I absolutely agree. Work is part of life. And look around you, especially in the WeWork communities. These people have a passion for what they do. It's a part of who they are. So it is their life. So they want to be able to make it as easy as possible. There is no more 9 to 5.
Right.
You don't leave your work at home. So that's my story.
And it for the longest time, work seemed to define people, and now I think people are, for whatever reason, and you're obviously speak to this, but this idea of we're more than a career that defines us.
Absolutely. It's not. People are so used to doing things because their parents expect them to,
right?
Or it's because it's what everybody else does. When I went to high school in New York, so many people were going to law school because it was expected of them, and now less than half of them do it because it was expected, but they didn't like it.
Well, and we create these resumes and credentials, and we feel obligated to kind of fulfill that path. So, lots more to talk about. I want to delve in a minute here about the physical and nutritional aspects of wellness and how that obviously spills over into your creativity and your productivity and so forth. But hold tight just for a minute. I want to introduce a couple of other guests here joining us on the show, and remind our listeners you're listening to the CoFounders podcast and startup show here in the Pro Business Channel studios in Atlanta. And we're just having a conversation with Rona Lewis from California, a big fan of WeWork, occupying some space out that way in L.A. And also joining us in the studio, we have Mr. Hercules. I got your name's almost as good as my last name, Casanova, but David Emilio Hercules. And we're going to be chatting with you in just a moment. Give us a little teaser, David, what you might be chatting about in your segment.
Well, I think this is my first time on live. Yeah. Well, we created this company, this new concept that might help a lot of people around Georgia and all the U.S.
Right.
It's basically a platform similar to Airbnb in which you can rent out tools to others if you have on your home, or we also do heavy equipment, so skid steers, backhoes, chainsaws.
That's crazy. Yeah. I know when you first mentioned that one. So hold tight. That was a teaser from David. And real quick, Rona, we're going to come back to you in just a moment. But I forgot to ask, what's a website or online how folks would reach out to you?
You can reach out to me. You can go to www.playmorecw.com.
And CW is corporate well-being.
Corporate well-being, right.
Okay, perfect.
Playmore. Or you can just you can email me directly at rona@playmorecw.com.
Perfect. And your home address, social security, and credit card number? We'll get to that later, yeah. That'll cost us. That's an extra $1.50, yeah. We'll talk off the air, yeah. All right, so, and David, we're going to come back to you in just a moment, but how would folks find you online?
They would have to go to henurents.com. So it's HENU rents.com or HENUequipment.com.
And you said they would have to. No, they'd want to, man.
Yes,
yeah,
they would.
They're just waiting to type in the WWs. All right. And we introduced earlier in the show Justin Blaylock. And so, Justin, let's take a minute and delve into what keeps you occupied. So, as we mentioned, you're talking about a B2B, a large tool set of software that you make available to clients via a web browser interface, helping them manage their grow their business. I mean, what business person doesn't want another widget to help them kind of further their business along? So, talk to us about the interplay with that and the technology sales pipeline.
Well, going back to what business person doesn't want another widget to help grow their business, basically everyone we've talked to, they have too many widgets and they don't use them.
They need a better one.
Well, we found a lot of times it's not even necessarily switching out their widgets, but just teaching them how to use them properly. We started with a very simple thing of how do we help businesses grow, and we come from a tech background, tech industry, because it's been booming here, and a lot of it is a lot of people have these. There's a lot of really great tools out there, and the problem is people aren't using them, and they're getting nothing out of them, and they keep paying for them. So we basically picked our favorites, and we kind of work together as a package and work with the business owners to optimize their business. And we, instead of throwing a massive suite of them all at once, we trickle them in, maybe some task management software first, then we might do some sales, or really depending on how their business is how we introduce or how we swap. We basically just kind of bridge the gap because a lot of it isn't intuitive to use, and we'll kind of hold their hand through it, and then we can give them some options, and we really work through them. And each business is drastically different,
right?
And what tools and stuff they actually need to use. So
what are some examples of like how open source can help?
Well, here's how open source helps. It allows us to keep our price low because we don't have to. We're not paying for a ton of software and then forwarding the license to you and then jacking up the price, right? But the fact that we keep a mostly open source library, then you basically are just paying for our support and our hosting, because we do everything through a cloud environment. And one annoyance is installing software on every device, every laptop. So you have a company of 50 people, that's a nightmare, right? So by just keeping everything via web access, you just just send them an email with their username and passwords we generate across the system, and then you're online, you're good to go. So we try to make ease of use, ease of access, and just simplicity. And because there's so many great tools out there, and people don't know how to use them, and they just are just wasting money.
Yeah, we get this tool overload. And speaking of tools, we're going to talk about tools in just a second with David. But you're talking online business tools. But so give us an example if you can. Does one come to mind, a client or a story or an example? Yeah,
there's a couple. All right, so one thing we did was we looked at a lot of stuff that was out there, and then we built our own tool, which is Unified DMS, that kind of fills the gap of where your Salesforce, your Sugar CRM, your Microsoft Dynamics, and doesn't quite cover. So that does a lot of better document management, digital signatures, time clock. And what we found is, for example, our unified DMS platform, we have a construction company that using it up in Alpharetta. Right. And they pretty much exclusively just use that. They're not really interested in the Sugar. They're not interested in, the project management. They're happy with just that document suite. And then we have a video game company that their game just came out today on Steam, actually, a couple hours ago.
Congratulations to those guys.
Yeah, and they haven't really touched the Sugar. We haven't really been pushing them on it because their sales pipeline is simple. Their game's on Steam. They promote on social media. They don't really need the Sugar. They don't need to go out and build the client list and everything. What they really need is the project management tools. So when we got them to use our project management tools, their productive and speed increased by about threefold. So just by getting people to use the software properly and actually commit to it, they can see great results even by just using a small part of the system. Because I'd rather one of our companies use just one piece of software properly than use the whole suite just every once in a while.
Well said. And my wheels are spinning just in terms of all the gizmos that we utilize here in the studio, software, hardware, and the cloud-based, but it can be overwhelming to integrate these. So are you talking about integration and syncing and implementation, or
Yes.
or streamlining and eliminating?
Well, we do both. When you get two things to us, we try to sync the data the best we can. So you don't have to do redundancies. You're not entering the same contact in the 4 different pieces of software. We do that as it's needed. It's usually we'll make a patch per business basis, and we can use it on other businesses. The other part is just removing a bunch of excess. Unified DMS, the part that we made, was basically you have a bunch of small software everyone uses.
Right.
Their calendar, their time recording, employee
And
scheduling, and document management. And we basically got rid of all those and put into one package. So we kind of simplified it to you have your sales and marketing tool, you have your project management tool, analytics tool, and then you have unified DMS that does all the small spots. It just fills in the gaps.
All right. So well said. And so, Justin, how would folks find you online?
You can find us at unifieddms.com, or you can find our partner company, novoanalytics.com, and they are a very good provider of analytics. All
right. So we're talking all things tools, online tools. We're going to segue to actual tools. And again, you're listening to the CoFounders podcast and startup show with Rich Casanova, your host, Craig Williams in New York. And we're going to come back to Arona in just a minute and talk to us about the physical and nutritional aspects of wellness and how that affects your well-being personally and professionally in a corporate environment. But David Hercules, we were just chatting with you just a moment ago, and it's how many times did this guy mention tools, right?
Yeah.
and that's your business, right? Yeah. The real world tools, that you can put your hands on,
Yeah. So, I mean, everyone knows somebody that just buys hundreds or thousands of dollars in tools and then they just sit there in their garage for years.
Because they need it for a project, right? A weekend warrior project.
Yeah, and then they never use them. So what we provide is a platform so that people that have all those tools just post them online, and then people can actually rent them from you, and you make money from them, and people can find them like half the price or a quarter of the price that you can find them at Home Depot. So it's a great business.
And be careful about Home Depot. There's world headquarters is right here. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I hear what you're saying. So it's a peer-to-peer tool sharing?
Yes, it is
Wow.
peer-to-peer. So what you would say, it's not competition to
No, I was just
Home
giving you
Depot.
a hard time. Yeah.
It's just that it's helping other people. You
Right,
know?
yeah.
Yeah. So it's basically that's what we do. And we also do it for heavy equipment. So we also do it for a more professional type of guy. Contractors that have skid steers, backhoes, excavators, they can post anything online, and then people can make that transaction online. You can make a security deposit on it or offer delivery on it. It's pretty complete.
Well, I see you helping out Justin's client, the contractor up in Alpharetta. There it is, a done deal. Yeah,
definitely.
So how much of it is commercial or larger scale projects as opposed to individuals?
How much larger?
No, I mean the percentage-wise. Is it more folks using it for contracting use as opposed to me and Tom. Yeah.
We started with heavy equipment,
Okay.
and that's our largest market right now. But
Okay.
we've separated tools now so that anyone can access that.
All right. And so how far along, because this is the startup co-founders show, so how far along are you in your business model, your timeline here?
Well, we've launched. We launched about 3 or 4 months ago, and we're in Florida, Georgia, and now we're entering Minnesota.
Wow.
Next week.
Minnesota, why?
Yeah, for some reason, somebody that was very interested in the model called us yesterday, and
Wow.
he wanted to put like 2,000 pieces of equipment right there. Yeah.
So, and this is rental, so it's not like a Craigslist where they're buying the equipment, right? So you're just renting it, and so if, like you said, you have that extra, those tools laying around.
Yes.
Leverage them, and right.
Right. Well, we actually started with rentals, but then as we advertised, we found out that there was a huge market for sales also. So what we do is we advertise your equipment for free.
Okay.
And then we charge you only if you sell it.
Sure.
Yeah, we
Percentage.
find you buyers.
Wow.
Yeah.
Why hasn't anybody else thought about this?
I don't know.
Right. So what are some challenges with your business?
I guess it's more of the getting people to post. That's spreading the word. It's something really new, and I guess that's the hardest thing that we've.
Well, it's that early adoption, right? Because I'm a big fan of Uber, and we've all probably been in an Uber vehicle. Yes or yes?
Yeah.
Rona,
Yeah.
you've been on Uber,
Oh, absolutely.
right? But think about this. David, it's much like, it's not exactly Uber, but it's similar in terms of obviously peer-to-peer and sharing and people adopting the idea. And, it's crazy. It was just easily 3 years ago, or maybe less, but give or take 3 years. If someone told you, hey, how about, Rona, you go to your phone and just a total stranger will show up and you're going to get in their car, what would you say? No chance.
No chance.
Right? That's
in
idiotic.
heck.
Right? That's
Absolutely.
bizarre. Yeah. That's not going to happen. I mean, but fast forward, once they kind of hit critical mass, it's just commonplace. We don't even give it a second thought. So we're going to come back to Rona in just a second. So David, that's a challenge. What's on the horizon? What's next? What do you see? How do you see this progressing?
Well, I guess that as we get more users into it, we'll expand nationally, and since it's a problem everywhere around the world, that's our
the end game, or where you're headed. Yeah, and then you're going to get that call from Google that wants to
Hopefully.
buy you. Yeah, right. All right, so Rona, let's revisit this idea of where we left off, the nutritional aspects of wellness and how much that comes into play, and other moving parts in terms of corporate well-being. You mentioned at the top of the show, I love this idea of the instant vacation, or what did you call it? The
imagination break.
Imagination break. I love that.
Right,
So,
right.
So you go into a corporate environment and people contract you. What does an imagination break look like?
An imagination break is when I or either one of my people will go in and take a group of employees, and we just play anywhere between 15 minutes and a half an hour. Some things are team building related or brainstorming, but more often than not, there's a sense of just playing for the sake of play. Play is inherent in our psyche, in our DNA. We learn social skills, things like that, and it allows us to just be freer. So we'll go in and we'll do everything from build forts with giant boxes. Because how much did you love doing that when you were a kid?
Yeah, big
What
time.
did everybody play with? They played with the refrigerator boxes,
Right.
We'll use Play-Doh and colored pencils. The adult coloring books are incredibly popular now because it keeps you mindful. It brings you back to the present. And if you watch kids play, They are so in the moment. They don't care if they're the best athlete. They don't care if they're the best artist. They just want to do it. It's the process, not the end result. And that's where the creativity comes in. That's where we want everyone to be. Make sense?
Absolutely. And I'm just, as you're describing that, I'm thinking of how many times have we watched, the video on Facebook or YouTube or somewhere where it's just somebody doing crazy stuff, or animals acting, or kids, whatever, doing the craziest things, and we'll watch it, and it'll get 20 million views, and then we watch that, and we just turn that off and go right back into our work zone, right?
Exactly, and that's when we get burnout. That's
right.
The adult. The adult in us is overly concerned with what other people think of us, and we're afraid to be judged. We want to be liked, but by doing that, we stop ourselves from being creative. Unfortunately, that happens when we're much younger. Too often, someone tells us we're not creative. Everyone is creative. Everyone. They may not be I can draw a horse that looks like a horse, but everyone has a creative talent. And a lot of times that's sucked out of us by an experience we had as a kid. I want to help bring that back, and the joy of play, and the joy of doing whatever your chosen profession is. And related to that is keeping healthy in other areas, because if you're eating junk food and having Red Bull all day, and I'm not saying Red Bull's totally bad because if they're a sponsor, I'm not saying never do bad things, but you have to live a healthy lifestyle and have a healthy mind, healthy body, healthy spirit sort of thing. It's a synergistic effect. So when you're playing, you want to be totally aware of what you're doing, and sometimes if you're on a sugar high, you can't, because then you're going to crash. Or if your body is tired because it's not in shape, it takes away from everything else. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So one thing just adds to the other.
Yeah, it's just amazing to me that people are baffled and by the idea of that they believe there's no correlation between what they eat, who they hang around with, what movies they watch, what content they absorb,
exactly,
and what their cycle is in terms of rest and so forth, and they don't connect any of those dots to the outcome. But I mean, I tell this to a lot of friends, like I'm very selective about even the movies that I'll go watch at a theater. Because if there's no point, if there's no outcome, if I'm going to spend 2 hours of my time, forget the money, but 2 hours and just taking in just whacked, bizarre, weird, crazy movie with no purpose, that comes in, that filters into your psyche at some point, And I'm going to spend 2 hours. I'd rather watch a comedy or an action thriller or a not say a documentary, but you don't typically go to a movie theater to watch those, although I love those on other platforms, but you are that the 5 people you hang around with and what you do on a daily basis. So we just got about a minute left here. We're almost out of time, but I wanted to touch on that nutritional aspect of wellness.
Sure. I mean, my chief health officer, which if you go on the website, you'll see, she's a holistic health coach, and she's brilliant with giving advice on how to keep a healthy balance, especially when you're at work, because stress also takes has an effect on how we live our lives, and food can add to that stress because it causes inflammation in the body. I also have a background in nutrition, and it's so important to not exacerbate the stress you have from living your life with the food that you eat. So we also help in that realm by just giving you tips. And we do consulting as well for people and companies who can't afford to have a whole program, but we break it down and formulate programs for all aspects of well-being, and it just makes it really fun.
Well, I definitely hear the passion in what you're doing, and once again, that's we're having the conversation with Rona Lewis in enjoying a rework space out in L.A., and from Playmore, and you can go to playmorecw.com Justin Blaylock, talk to us about what's next for you in your venture with United DMS.
So basically, our next step is, we just took our biggest step not too long ago, was we replaced all of our hosts and became our own host. So we're our own cloud host now. And with this, that's what gave us the flexibility to really help these businesses we were working with. And right now, it's just we're just looking for more businesses that would like the help, because a lot of this stuff, initially our goal was, let's make it so simple anyone can do it, right? That seemed like a good idea. That seemed simple. When we got into it, we found a problem. If we made it too simple, it was because we had to remove too many features, and it became a nerd, and you're just paying for a service and you're not really getting the full features out of it, right? And if it's too complicated, no one can use it. So we really found ourselves more from a software providing role to a consulting role, where not only now we provide these software, but we are your contact. We'll make sure that you get going. We work with your business. When someone signs up, we pretty much spend the first week, 2 weeks at their office trying to get them on the right track. And we found that a lot of people fail is just because whoever they get the software from just gives it to them and wishes them the best of luck.
Right.
And that's just not going to work. That model needs to change. When a lot of these business softwares, they are great. They can do wonderful things. They can really optimize your time flow, but you got to have someone sit there and hold your hand. And a scary part is, for a lot of businesses, you have to change a little bit. If you want to make, let's say, SugarSam or Salesforce work for you, you got to work for it. You have to change how you do some things and adapt to it. And without someone holding your hand along the process, it can be scary, and in some cases, basically impossible.
Well, it almost ties a little bit to Rona we didn't get touched on this with Rona, but in personal, but also in business, you're talking about making changes. And I like this idea of you almost maybe camp out with them the first couple of weeks, because you want to get them off on a good start. And it's back to the habits, personal and business. It takes about 21 to 30 days to form a good habit or to lose an existing habit.
Yeah.
And so in business, we can have the greatest software widget ever created by man, but if it's not adopted into your workflow, then it's virtually useless potentially, right?
Well, yeah. And one thing that we find interesting is, when we're doing a lot of research, is even if someone doesn't use the tool, right, they'll continue paying for it for up to like 5 years.
Well, yeah. That's like the gym membership, right?
Exactly. So people are already wasting the money. So, but really, yeah, it is just teaching people how to use it properly and helping their habits go towards the software. Like a good example, let's just go with the game company, because they're the most relevant. Their game just came out today. We've been working closely with them. They were kind of scattered because they have 2 developers in Germany, 2 developers in London, 2 developers in California, and 1 developer in New York, right? And so they were kind of just scattered using a chat program to communicate. So I took them, forced them all to use Conboard, which is project management software.
What's it called?
Conboard. It's just a column setup where you move. Yeah, and I forced them rigidly to use it. Made a bunch of stuff automated for them. Created their boards, and like the game progress went threefold.
Wow.
So and I believe their end product is going to be much better now, and they're spending the same amount of time they were spending before. Right. They're just spending it in the right places. They've removed some redundancies. They're not wasting time on other things. They're getting feedback quicker. It's just you can easily optimize, so you don't spend any more time, any more effort, any more money. You can get better results. You just have to go about doing things the right way.
I like, Justin, the way you said that. This guy has the nerve to tell his client, force them to do this.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Because I have one of our hosts here in the studio is underwriter sponsoring their own show. And one of their colleagues asked for them, hey, would you mind giving this person critique on how they're doing on their show? And I'm like, well, I don't want to kind of lose them as a client or whatever. I don't want to offend them, right? But you have the courage to do that.
Yeah, well, if we worry about offending our client, then we're not helping them. We have to be blunt with them in some cases. But it's because we charge per user, right?
I was going to ask you your business model. We're almost out of time, but real quickly to you and David, your business model. So is it subscription or?
We do subscription per user. And we find that it's easier to grow the companies we have than to find new ones. So our interest is making your business better, because the bigger your business gets, the more money we get. So our interest is in growing your business.
I like that. So we're going to start charging each guest. That's a good idea, whatever. Yeah. Just per guest or per user. So, Justin, again, we can find you at uniteddms.com.
UnifiedDMS.com.
Yeah, it says it right here, Unified, yeah.
or innovoanalytics.com.
Okay, you may want to get that United DMS just to cover the bases there. Yeah, apologies for that. So, David, you're an anchor man here. So, talk to us about your business model. It involves rentals as well as sales now, right?
Yes.
Or
so
started with
rentals.
rentals, yeah.
Yeah, it started with rentals. So our business model is similar to that of Airbnb. We charge a percentage of the transaction to the owner and a percentage of the transaction to the renter, but it's very small. On heavy equipment, it's about 5%, and on tools, it's about 12%.
Right.
So it's very small, and we don't charge you anything just to be there. It's just you can rent out and you can post anything that you want. And if you get a request, and if you accept that request, then you will be
That's when it
charged.
kicks in, yeah.
For the sales, it's completely different. So what we do is we take your machines that you post for sale and we repost them on several of the different platforms globally. So we can have advertising becomes a big scale of advertising around all the U.S. and around everywhere around the world. So we get calls from Egypt, calls from Africa, calls from Latin America for your machines.
Wow.
And we just find you the right buyer. And then we charge you only if that machine is sold.
Well, let me ask you a dumb question that you probably run into your business. So if we're peer-to-peer sharing and renting our equipment and getting it back, what happens when Bob, messes up my equipment?
So
Is that pretty much on the peer-to-peer platform responsibility, or?
Yes, I mean, mainly what we do is we let you put a security deposit to it. So if something happens to it, then that person is completely responsible, but you will get the security deposit back. If you're a contractor, you will have builder's insurance. So all the rentals that you do are actually covered under your policy, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I can see that on a commercial basis, but I'm just thinking the individual.
Yeah, that's more of the security deposit. That's
because when your neighbor Larry comes over, can I borrow the lawnmower? You're like, well, I don't know, because is it going to come back in the same condition, whatever?
Well, that's why you put a security deposit.
Exactly.
To it.
Yeah,
exactly. And if something happens to that person, then we actually have a liability insurance that will cover you.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So you thought this through a little bit, yeah.
Yes.
All right, and one more time, how would folks reach out to you? So
you would have to just go to henurents.com or henuequipment.com.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So we want to thank all of our guests for being on the show, Justin, Rona, and David, and another episode of the CoFounders podcast and startup show. Rich Casanova on behalf of Craig Williams. And, of course, a big shout-out to our show sponsor and helping make this possible, WeWork. And we'll see you next time on the next episode.
Thanks, Rich.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the CoFounders podcast, brought to you in part by WeWork, the world's largest network of co-working spaces. More info at